Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, it's Thursday, it's my first day back to work this week, and it was a pretty good day at work, I gotta say. I got assigned to a machine that I've never really worked on before. I've actually walked by it a couple of times, and I noted at the time that, man, this machine runs a lot slower than the rest of them. It does basically the same thing. It does it in a little bit different a way. And I was actually partnered up with someone I've never actually worked with directly either. Now, this is a person I've gone to on a number of occasions when I needed help with something, but never actually got partnered up with her on a machine. I think it's primarily because she's always on this one particular machine, and I've never worked that machine before. So it started out real slow. Like I said, this machine probably works about a third the speed of most of the rest of the machines. It must be an older machine. That's all I can figure. It must be one of the first ones that they installed. And like I said, it runs at about third the speed. So there's a lot of dead time between, doing stuff. When you're running on one of the faster machines, it's like, there's two jobs that you have to do. And to keep those jobs going, it's almost just boom, 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 full-time, work every second. This machine, not so much. So there was a lot of time to kind of just, sit down and kick back and kind of relax a little bit. And it went that way until I went off on my first break about 10 or 10:30. When I got back from my break, something had happened to the machine while I was gone, and it was down, and they had technicians working on it. So my lead sent me to another machine, a machine that I've worked with a number of times before, and a person I've worked with a bunch of times before. And I ran that machine basically for the rest of the day. Now, there was a little frustrating part with that, and we couldn't figure out why, but this machine, there's a robot that basically at the end of the line of this machine, it takes the product and puts it in these little trays, because later on the product needs to go from a tray into the packaging. And since that's done by a robot also, you need to have real kind of precise locations so the robot knows where to pick things up. Well, for some reason, all day long, just kind of randomly, periodically during the day, the machine would get jammed up, and it wouldn't be able to drop a part into the slot it was supposed to. And of course, then when the part doesn't land in the slot, it ends up falling out, and then it gets in the way of the next parts that are coming along. And we were stopping this machine all day long, and we probably had 10 or 15% failure rate, just because every time they got to this particular part of the machine, everything would get jammed up, and you'd have to shut off the machine and clear off all the product and get everything cleared out. And of course, then once you've messed with the product, you have to dispose of it. You can't use it again. So, like I said, the yields were just really kind of horrible for a good part of the day. Well, while I was out on my lunch break today, finally somebody broke down and said, we got to get a technician in here to look at this. So when I got back from my lunch break, there was a technician working on the machine, trying to figure out what was wrong. And, he sat there and he watched it, and, it would get all jammed up and messed up, and we'd have to clear a bunch of product, and he'd go in there and play with it a little bit, and then he'd turn it back on again, and it would get jammed up and messed up again. And he spent probably 30 or 45 minutes looking at this machine. And all of a sudden, he realized that somebody had made an unauthorized modification to the machine. Apparently, they were having problems with it, and they slid a little piece of tape between a couple of mechanical parts, which offset the adjustments a little bit, the alignment a little bit, and that was the cause of the problem. Once he got that out of there, the machine worked perfectly. I knew there was something wrong with the positioning of the trays that collect the product, because every time it would come to this one tray, it would get tangled up and it would have problems. And the rest of the trays would work fine, and So I'm looking at this, and it's like, there's got to be some sort of an alignment thing. And finally, they got in there, and it's like, yeah, somebody, the guy pulled out a piece of tape, and it was masking tape, and it was about 3 or 4 layers thick. So somebody had just kind of put 3 or 4 layers of masking tape on top of each other and wedged it in there, and that was what screwed the whole system up. So, this is kind of one of those lessons you learn. Don't make modifications to the machine if you don't know what you're doing, because especially if you haven't told somebody else what you've done, because then if what you've done causes problems, it might take him forever to find it. It could have taken hours for this guy to find it. He just got lucky and happened to look in the place and said, what's that doing there? That's not supposed to be there. The second he popped it out of there, the machine ran great, and it ran great for the rest of the day. So, I don't know. That's just kind of our lesson for today. Don't mess with machines if you don't know what they do. And I mean, I've kind of taken that approach too. I've learned, a bunch about how this machine works, but I'm still not ready to the point where I can make recommendations about, or make modifications to the machine. I can oftentimes look at a machine and see where the problem is, and I can point to the tech and say, yeah, see, here's where it is. But I'm still depending on the technician to do the work, not myself, because I've only been with the company for, about 2 months now, and been working on this line for 4 or 5 weeks. So I'm far from being a technician, far from being qualified to do anything on this, and that's just one of those things you have to deal with in this industry. So, you know what? That's a lesson for today. Don't mess with things you don't understand. Anyway, I think that's all that I have for today. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.